Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most telling you that this episode of JJ Meets World features Jack Seaman and Tony Mangnall. Jack Seaman is the proprietor of a local institution that buys and sells gold, silver, and precious metals. You get a deep dive into what it actually means to have a gold bar in your possession. Plus, Tony gives us some schooling on cryptocurrency, and I talk about a forgotten Steven Spielberg series called Amazing Stories. All of this and so much more on today's episode of JJ Meets World. But first, a word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprain. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
There used to be an old television show called Amazing Stories. It's being rebooted right now to be on the Apple streaming format. And there's one particular episode starring Mr. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker himself. And it's, in my opinion, the best episode of this show. So it starts out when Mark Hamill is like a young boy, and this like fairy or like guardian of the woods, whatever it is, appears to
like
him.
Like a wood nymph?
Yeah, but I mean, it's like I assume wood nymph is a female. This is a male.
Okay, maybe a satyr.
It's like, yeah, like a little, yeah, he's just like a little guy.
Yeah.
I mean, a leprechaun. He'd be a leprechaun if it were Ireland.
Got it. Okay.
And so he tells him to never throw away anything that he loves and to treasure those things that he loves. And so he's kind of lackadaisical at this point. And so then he becomes like a hard worker, and he's, getting shifts, sweeping out stores and closing down this. And he's saving all this money, and his parents are so proud of him because he's learned the value of work, and he's going to pay for himself to go off to college. And one day he shows up and he's got this old car. I mean, it's like, must have been expensive at the time, beautiful old car. And they kick him out of the house. And so he packs up everything that he owns in his bedroom and puts it in this car and drives away. And then it goes several years later, and you can tell he's just kind of been living, meal to meal at best. He kind of looks like an old prospector. And some kids interact with him, and a guy's purchased the land that he's been squatting on. And he tells, in this wood nymph appears again and says, like, remember, don't throw away anything you love. And he goes, you're going to be a wealthy man. And so he thinks that his love of this stuff is going to make him wealthy. So he finally decides to do himself in, but he needs like $3 worth of gas.
Okay.
And so he's at the gas station begging for money to get $3 in gas so he can drive off the Grand Canyon and finally do himself in, because he's super old and all he's got is this trunk full of garbage from his old bedroom, and he's got this cookie jar that looks like an old sailor. And this woman says, like, well, I'll give you 10 for it, for this cookie jar. And he goes, you're going to give me $10 for this old cookie jar. That's fine. She's like, all right, well, I'll be right back. Like, I need to go to the bank to get the cashier's check for $10,000. He goes, $10,000? Well, everything that he has in the back, he's got like a Mickey Mantle rookie card, and everything that he has are old and precious, and so it goes for auction, and he, becomes a very wealthy man because he saved the things he loved. Now, that being said, he also endured like 80 years.
He's a senior citizen at this point now.
Yeah, it was awful for him.
It would have been much more fun to have that money during that time.
Yeah. So our guest today, with returning guest Tony Mangnall, is a gentleman named Jack Seaman. We get into a deep discussion about precious metals, specifically silver and gold. We talk about the world economy. But if you're just somebody who is interested in what kind of future is approaching us, it's hard to dismiss when somebody uses history to kind of back up their argument. And I think Tony does a really good job of saying, like, the world's economy has failed before, and we're inching towards like a future where it's at like that. We talk about some stuff with Tucker's uncle, like a unique thing he told us about back in the day when he was showing us all the cool stuff that he collects. Your uncle's the kind of guy who seems to like have a collection. Like, he loves collecting stuff. He's a collector of collections.
If there's the thing, if it's something you can really hunt for, and you have to have a level of expertise on it, that's definitely what he's doing. He mostly does guns and guitars. The two things that he does. And
he does it so well. I'd like you folks to enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World with Jack Seaman and returning guest Tony Mangnall.
JJ Meets World.
Tony Mangnall and Jack Seaman in the studio.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello.
Tony, you've been here before, Jack. This is your first time. I instantly know I'm going to like you, Jack, because you're wearing a Pan Am shirt.
It's pretty cool.
Where do you get that?
I get this in Maui.
Did you really?
At the store in Maui that I always get my shirts from. Yeah. This is like my third Pan Am shirt.
Is it really? Why do you go for a Pan Am shirt?
Just because it's old school. It's cool, man.
I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing to think that was the most powerful airline in the world, and now, like, it's completely gone, right? Like, Pan Am is no longer... Did they break it up into different companies, or...
As far as I know, yeah, it got broken up and bought out, and the planes don't run anymore, and... Used to be the bee's knees.
Right. I don't fly on, who is the guy who saved all of his urine all the time? It was crazy. And he was the movie The Aviator is about Howard Hughes.
Oh, yeah.
I don't fly on Hughes Airline either. So, but he, I think, bought into United, and look at that. They're still here price gouging me every single day. So what are you going to do? Jack, I hear that you're a man to talk to when it comes to the stones of the earth, the metals, and things as such. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I own MinDak Gold Exchange, local Fargo precious metals dealer. I've been in business for just about 8 years now, and I've been in the industry for about 10. And started with a kiosk in the Moorhead Center Mall hallway. That was how I started the business. It was awesome.
Near what anchor location?
I was right by the elevators, kind of like the little Moorhead's living room in the mall there.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
I used to have
spot.
the fountain there. Now it's just kind of like a living room. So anyway, I had my little kiosk backed up to the fountain, and that's where I sat, hoping that somebody would walk by and sell me some gold or silver. And then I ended up moving downtown to Broadway for about 5 years, and now we're located out on 17th Avenue South, just west of Home Depot in the Scaff apartment building.
So first thing I'm curious about is that is a big business. Everybody in their home somewhere has some piece of that precious metal, whether it's a ring, something that they inherited from a loved one, even if they've got just the world's worst class ring from years ago that's only 1% of some kind of gold substitute. Everybody is there, and it's a universal thing. We all know that there's value in these things, gold and silver, and was it titanium? Is that the one that everyone loves for rings or something?
Yeah,
what's
that's
the fancy
popular.
one that's
a
right now?
non-precious alloy that's popular. Platinum rings, even palladium rings are popular, but the two big dogs are gold and silver. Of course, it's been that way for 5,000 years. It'll be that way for 5,000 more.
So the cash for gold thing, I used to see those commercials every 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not seeing those as much anymore. Is that because people sent in all their gold and we're done with it now, or what's the deal?
No, it's because the price of gold dropped about 40% between 2011 and 2013.
Whoa.
And so you were seeing a lot of those ads. I mean, everybody and their dog was buying gold and silver back in 2010, 2011. In August of 2011 was the all-time high in the price of gold. It was $1,900 an ounce. Silver was almost $50 an ounce. So gold went from 1,900 all the way down to about 1,050 by December of 2013, and then it started coming back up. As we speak, it's about $1,675 an ounce. That's $1,675, not $16.75, just so you know. And silver was $50 an ounce, and that fell all the way down to about $13 was the lowest it got.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Do people have like gold bars sitting in their house?
If they're smart, they do. Yeah.
Right. If I'm thinking about gold, I'm thinking about a gold bar like from Die Hard 3 when they break into the New York gold deposit or whatever that was.
Uh-huh.
And so do gold bars really exist, and are they perfect, or are they more like ragged around the edges?
No, they exist, and they're flawless. They're machine pressed, and they're 1 ounce of pure 99.99% gold, and they're encapsulated in a little card, like a plastic holder, if you will. It kind of looks like a credit card, and inside that is your 1 ounce of gold, and it's an investment. I mean, people all day, every day come in and buy and sell gold and silver as an investment vehicle more than jewelry or things like that. I mean, obviously, I buy gold jewelry and silver and stuff like that as well. But, people are kind of waking up to the fact that maybe, just maybe, these paper currencies that the whole world is based their monetary system on, that are backed by nothing, might not be worth something in the near future or down the road. So they want to have a backup plan. And that's kind of what I'm there for.
Well, and at the time of this recording, the stock market has been in one of the biggest free falls off of one of the most record-setting days. It's if I were close to retirement right now, I would be sweating pretty heavy knowing that, okay, I might have to work for an extra 6-7 years based off of what's going on right now. But that, gold for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it has a great sustained value, and you buy a gold bar, and 10 years from now, the odds of that increasing in value are pretty much set.
Yeah, it's a good long-term investment, but I think the thing that I focus on when I try to tell people to buy gold and silver is that you really shouldn't focus so much on, hey, I'm going to buy an ounce of gold today, and like in 6 months, the price is going to be up $200, and I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to make that money and put more fiat dollars in my pocket. Gold is insurance, is really what it is. It's the money of last resort. If the shit hits the fan globally and all these stock markets come down and all these government currencies are trash because all the dollars in the world, no matter who makes them, are backed by absolutely nothing. If that all happens, then what are you going to have? What's your wealth? If you woke up tomorrow, JJ, and you couldn't spend $1, what wealth would you have? That's one of my favorite questions. So
yeah, because my DVD collection did not increase in value.
Probably not. You're going to
horrible investment.
If you need some bread and water, milk or whatever, and you're out there looking for it, somebody might not want your DVDs. You might have a hard time finding a customer that'll trade you their bread for your DVDs.
Look, he's got Captain Ron in that DVD
Oh,
collection.
well,
You're at least
in
getting a week's
3
worth of groceries.
formats.
So there you go.
But if you have gold or silver, there's a good chance that somebody's going to want that. They might not want it in the long term, but they know that they can use it to get what they want. And of course, we're talking about apocalyptic type scenarios, but it's something to keep in mind. I mean,
my wife has got a go bag in her closet, and there's a machete as part of it. And she goes, listen, you're making fun of me now, but one day if the shit hits the fan, you're going to be coming to me first being like, thank God you squirreled away all of those like freeze-dried meals. Thank goodness you've got all of this stuff and a weapon.
It's smart, actually. I've been saying my investment plan for 2020s is Bitcoin, bullion, bullets, and butt wipe. You got those things,
Yeah.
You're good. And, she's smart, too. I mean, I was just at Costco yesterday, actually, and toilet paper's flying off the shelves. They had signs up saying only 2 per customer, per trip, per day. So they're trying to keep people from hoarding that. And, it's going to look pretty rough in the next couple of years. Come what may, you're going to want some gold and silver.
Well, and we're
and
at
a machete.
And it's universal, too, right? You talk about the world economy. Gold is as precious in the United States as it is in China, as it is in the UK. I mean, it's got a value, and we came from a time when certain things we were able to find salt easier. So salt no longer is a currency like it was in ancient Italy, but there's only so much gold in the planet, right? And that's what makes it so precious, and that's what makes it so limited, is we can't just go out and make more of it.
Well, the thing that I love, I think the fact about precious metals that I find the most intriguing is the fact that they were made in the hearts of stars. That gold isn't something that the Earth just produces and generates on its own. Like these are very rare metals, and you have to capture them from star explosions, basically, for them to be in sort of the makeup of the Earth as it's creating. So it's very finite. There's a lot of scarcity when it comes to it, and so I just that scientific fact alone makes me so interested in precious metals. Also, the fact that gold 1,000 years ago looks just as pretty now as it did then. I don't have any gold; it's too expensive for me right now. But I do have silver, and I play with it all the time, so it's tarnishing like crazy. But silver is going to tarnish over time. But gold, it looks just as good now as it did to the pharaohs of Egypt.
Isn't that the funny thing about when you own precious metals? You said you play with it.
Yeah.
I'm old. I've been in the business for a decade. I play with my gold and silver all the time. If I got a slow day at the shop, I'll go in back by the safe and I'll grab my own stash out of there. I'll sit down cross-legged on the floor like a kid and spread it all out and play with it. Oh, yeah, I forgot I had this.
When
awesome.
Tony first got me into silver, he was like, just hold it. It feels like money. It feels like value as you're holding it. And God, what was the other thing that you had said to me? I can't remember exactly what it was, but when I worked for Poker TV, I got into poker chip riffling at my desk as a fidget. And the Silver Eagles are just about the exact circle size of a poker chip. They're a lot heavier, but now I riffle my my silver
great.
coins, which has really made poker chips feel like paper to me when I do it, because it's almost like I'm working out my forearms as I riffle them.
I thought it'd be fun to have a 1 ounce, 2 ounce, no limit silver ounce game instead of using chips.
Oof.
Use silver rounds as your chips.
Right.
Separate the men from the
Everybody's going
boys.
to
It would change the way you play the game, right?
Oh yeah, you're tightening up like never before.
It can be so easy for poker to feel like funny money.
Yeah.
Because it's not sitting in front of you on the table. You've just got these chips with denominations on them that matter only so much if it's a tournament versus a cash game. And yeah, poker chips are really good at making you forget that you're playing with money at that moment.
Jack, let me take you back to the summer of 1996. My family went on a road trip where we hit up 12 states in a 2-week road trip. And one of the places we hit up was in South Dakota in the Black Hills. And so we're a family. I was in 6th grade. My sister was in 4th grade. We did a pan for gold experience.
Nice.
And so they, I thought, we're going to go out to a riverbed somewhere and dig it up. No, they just had brought in a bunch of dirt and they were running it through kind of a channel that they had built out of wood there. And so they're like, all right, you put it in and you sift and you put through this sifter and then you see if you find something in this sifter. And I'm expecting to walk away with a gold nugget. I thought this stuff just sprung forth from the earth like a fountain. And so all of a sudden there's commotion because we're doing it with 30 other families and it's, we found, oh. And so everyone crowds over and it's this huge thing. Well, this person found a fleck of gold that is less than the size of an eraser in circumference. And they're like, wow, this is a big find. We haven't seen a find like this in a while. And it's completely flat. I mean, it is a flake of gold. And so my sister, who's in 4th grade, mind you, when we get done with this, goes inside the gift shop and comes out and she's purchased a little bottle of it's got water and then it's got iron pyrite in it. So they're big pieces of that. And she goes, let's just tell everyone this is what we found when we did the gold experience. And later on in life, when I got into the show Deadwood, I got a real appreciation for gold and watching how this happened.
The color.
The color, yeah.
I see the color in the hills. It speaks to me.
And it like even going down there today, and they talk about the history and how it like directly affected everything in that area. And you know, it's not a ranching community, it's not a farming community. It was 100% based around the fact that they found gold, and this gold was the reason they were there. It's the same reason why we have the oil boom in the western part of North Dakota, is people are going and they're searching for treasure. And that's what it is treasure. Are we still mining gold today?
Sure. I mean, gold is mined all over the world, and mining operations will rise and fall with the price. As the price goes up, mining activity goes up, and as the price falls, mining activity will decline. And I think there was a time, I'm not super into the mining side of it, but I think when gold got down to that 1,050 per ounce range, most of the mining activity in the world had ceased at that point, because it was like, what the point? They weren't profitable. But yeah, obviously it's still mined. They're still digging it out of the earth. There's still a live market for it. It's in great demand. And, a couple other things I wanted to touch on in case we move off the subject is the cool thing about these 1 ounce gold bars or silver, anything that you buy, any precious metal that's in bar or coin form, you can buy in my shop, hop on a flight to Outer Mongolia, get off the plane, walk into the local gold shop there and sell it for close to what you're going to sell it back to me for in my shop. Every dealer in the world buys and sells for about the same price. And it's recognized as valuable no matter where you go, and you can know about what to expect. The other point I wanted to make was,
I think the only other thing where you can do that is human hair.
You think so, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I'm not a big hair dealer.
Every culture values human hair.
Oh,
So your hair doll's going up in price, or
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
So
We're
some
screwed,
of
Tony.
us in the room have more value than others
Yeah,
when
we
it comes to the hair trade. Is that
But what JJ doesn't realize is that beard hair is far more valuable, and he cannot grow one
Yeah,
of those.
I can't. It'll never happen for me. That's why I'm putting all my money into silver and gold.
I like it. I like it. The other point I wanted to make is I sometimes flippantly discuss about how the shit's going to hit the fan, and these paper dollars that aren't backed by anything are going to be worthless. People hear that, and I think they have a hard time understanding what that means. So I just wanted to touch on that for a second. Our paper dollars that we have in our notes aren't really valuable. They're just paper with ink on them. The reason that they're valuable is it's an implied value, and everybody in the country wants them, right? You can trade them for goods and services, but it's not really backed by anything. And we're $23 trillion in debt. The whole world is under a mountain of debt, but none of this money that we're making is backed by anything. And when you look at currencies in the history of our world that weren't backed by anything, that's what's called a fiat currency, they all fail. I mean, every single one of them has failed. The one before the dollar became king currency after World War II, when we basically used our brute force and said, we have the nuclear weapon, use our dollar as the world's reserve currency or we'll kill you, is pretty much what we said. And that's been our policy since. And you can see it in our foreign policy. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit off the track here.
no, that's the ticket, man. I love talking about that stuff.
But that was, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that was tied in too with like the Saudis and oil and getting
the petrodollar,
getting everyone getting onto having them only trade in American dollars for their oil.
That's right.
Which then essentially made everyone have to switch to. It made the American dollar the sort of the world's quote unquote currency because of that, right?
Exactly. In 1971, I think it was, Nixon removed the convertibility of U.S. dollars to gold. And he did that because the rest of the world called our bluff. Up until that point, basically from the beginning of our central banks in 1913 up until through our two world wars, we'd been inflating against the value of that gold. So it used to be you could take a $20 bill and trade it for 1 ounce of gold at the central bank, and it was completely convertible.
I wish we had a time machine.
Oh, I know. But after, so it was FDR that made it actually illegal to own gold. And they went to your house with guns. They took your gold and they gave you like the convertibility price at that point, $20 for an ounce of silver. And the minute they hoarded all the gold, they went and sold it on the international market for like $600 an ounce. So one of the greatest grifts by any mafia or government or anybody in the history of the world was when the U.S. stole Americans' gold. I mean, they just flat out took everyone's wealth and traded them paper for it. And when they put that amount of gold into Fort Knox, they kept saying, no, these dollars are good. You can trade the 20 for the gold that we stole from you. Trust us. Of course, they inflated against it. Every time they needed a new aircraft carrier or a new social program, they would just print money against the value of this gold. And of course, they kept saying the convertibility was the same, but I think the rest of the world started to figure that out. And there's a famous speech by I forget his name, he was the president of France at the time. He was like, look, if this is true, we want our gold. We want to trade these dollars for gold. And that's right when Nixon's like, well, okay, guys, here's the deal. We're going to stop the convertibility of U.S. dollars to gold for the time being. And when you look at that time in 1971, inflation skyrocketed. And there's video of runs on gas stations, consumer prices going through the roof. I mean, that was the point at which people realized, oh, it's just a piece of paper. It's not worth anything. At that point, we created an international system for trading oil. And with OPEC, we said to them, look, we will guarantee all of your shipping. We will guarantee all of the oil that goes out of your country will not be raided by pirates. It will get to where it's going. But in order to do that, you need to use U.S. dollars when you sell oil. So that's where we get the term petrodollar. And that's really what backstops the value of the U.S. dollar now. And that's why every president since Nixon has to go to Saudi Arabia and kiss the ring of these scummy little dictators and bend the knee, because if OPEC ever stops trading oil for dollars, the value of the U.S. dollar will collapse. I mean, catastrophically. We're talking $30 gallon of milk when you grab it out of the freezer, and it's $35 when you put it down at the cashier register. And this has happened so many times in history. It's just pure hubris to think that it's not going to happen here in America. And we're just waiting for some major event.
Okay, we're gonna pause this podcast real quick. I'm gonna run out and go get some gold.
Get it,
because I'm very terrified now.
Yep.
I'm also gonna get bottled water and toilet paper.
The last fiat currency before the dollar was king of the world was the British pound sterling. That was the global reserve currency. The what? Nobody even knows what the hell a pound sterling is. Who cares? Well, we're talking about something that's less than 150 years ago, somewhere around there, 200 years ago. So it wasn't that long ago if you look in the grand scheme of things. So people say, oh, the dollar crash and whatever, conspiracy theorist, you're a gold salesman. Of course you're going to say that. Well, take a look around. I mean, it's not that preposterous to think that a fiat currency could fail, especially a fiat currency of a government like ours that has notes that are backed by nothing. There's nothing as a backstop for our currency. We have a Federal Reserve, a central bank that prints money to infinity anytime the stock market teeters a little bit, which is why we're $23 trillion in debt. And people can't even grasp that concept because $1 trillion is so large that you can't even wrap your head around it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think we're kind of screwed.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of time until something really bad happens. And it's funny, I was on Twitter this morning, and Saudi Arabia this morning flooded the oil market. They said, we're not going to reduce production to keep the price of a barrel of oil up. Screw you all. We're flooding the market. And they are pumping oil out. There's no more price protection. And Saudi Aramco, the national oil company of Saudi Arabia, is now trading at a price below their IPO price.
Yep. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They're just doing it to flush out
competitors. And Russia's saying, well, screw it, then we're going to leave the spigots on too. So now you're seeing these countries that were once working together to keep this oil market afloat start to fight with each other. And if they're fighting with each other, they're going to fight with us.
Yep.
And that's where you might see the U.S. dollar find its end, is like Tony said, if other countries are willing to accept a Chinese yuan or a Russian ruble or whatever for the oil instead of the U.S. dollar, then countries have no need for the U.S. dollar.
Exactly.
And if other countries don't need it, the value is just going to plummet.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. Well, I've got a lot of questions, so you keep going.
Well, I was just going to say that's interesting on two different points. One, it drove the price of oil down less than $40 a barrel, or right around $40 a barrel. Well, what they're trying to do is flush out the American shale play in Texas and right here in North Dakota. And our oil is not profitable until it's up to like $60, $70 a barrel, something like that. So all of this economic activity that we've been enjoying here in North Dakota, depending on how long this oil glut goes, I mean, we're going to take her right in the teeth, right in the jaw.
Well, didn't they flood the market too, like shortly after the boom started in North Dakota too?
Yep.
Like I remember hearing news about that happening.
Yep.
And it was in response to all the oil we found.
Exactly. And so in the face of that, really a nation like China or Russia, all they have to do, and I think they're doing this, not to get too conspiratorial, but there's some evidence out there for it, that China has been purchasing a lot of gold off of the commodities exchanges, the COMEX it's called. And what that means is when you're buying and selling precious metals, internationally, you want to do it on the commodities exchange typically, and that's where a lot of retail buyers do it, or pension funds, stuff like that. And it's just an exchange like any other, like a stock market or whatever. You can buy and sell and settle in gold and gold futures, stuff like that. Futures are just contracts against the price of gold. But so what they're doing is trying to buy kind of under the table off the COMEX, because if they're making huge purchases, that's going to affect the price of gold. But there's so many futures contracts against the price of gold and silver that if that price starts to waver a lot, people start losing billions of dollars. I even heard like JP Morgan, based on their futures contracts, for every dollar the value of silver goes up, they lose like $1 billion because they're hedged against it in so many strange derivative ways. So China's been, as I understand it, purchasing a lot of gold off of the COMEX so that the prices are not affected, but that the end game is going to be to release a currency based on gold. And the day they do that, they win the war against America without firing a shot. And if I were China, that's exactly what I'd be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
we're not talking about a war fought with bullets anymore. We're talking about a war fought with dollars and cents.
Exactly.
Well, and at that point, do you, in the event of that happening exactly as you're saying, do you think that certainly it will amongst individuals get more people over onto cryptocurrencies?
Well, I think the adoption of cryptocurrencies as a global currency is a near certainty. And really the power of something like Bitcoin, and we could just be a whole other podcast just talking about this subject.
We got time.
I'll try and make it quick.
Oh, we got time. We can talk about that too.
Okay, well, Bitcoin's amazing, but Ethereum is next level. That's anyway, not to get too far into those distinctions. I just want to say that governments, they are going to try and issue currency, because as long as the government controls money, they control everything. I mean, money is the operating system of the world. And whether you want to do social programs or war or, aircraft carriers, anything you want to do, I like to think of money as the operating system. It's a lot like if you want to run Microsoft Word on your computer or a video game on your computer, you can run those, but it's important. You have to know the operating system that you're going to install it on. And the same is true for any project under the sun. Any human project requires this operating system of finance. And so many wars and so much of history, if you really drill down, can be boiled down to what kind of operating system that version of history was being run on at that time. For most of history, it was run on gold and silver. And so what Bitcoin, why it's so revolutionary, is it will forever take away the ability of governments to control money. And they're going to try. And they're already talking about, a Fed coin. In China, when they do go have gold backed, it's going to be probably a digital coin backed by gold. But the problem is they're still going to want that aspect of control. So it's still going to be centralized in some sense. And people will just learn, you know what? Now the government knows every single thing I buy. They track my every movement from my purchases. That I can't make purchases over $300 before having to report to them. I have to pay fees to send it across borders. And all of that goes away when Bitcoin is an option. So there's just no getting away from how much better Bitcoin is than anything that's come before. It is a paradigm shift in the course of humanity, unparalleled in human history. And we just don't know the full implication of it. But even understanding a fraction of the implication bowls me over. It keeps me up at night. It gets me so excited. All my friends, sick, except for you, Tucker, you guys, sick of me talking about it. Like I've just burst into the office of, hey guys, Bitcoin's this, and they're just like, oh God, here he goes again. I don't blame him. I get pretty insufferable when I'm excited about something.
It's not great at parties for sure.
Yeah, it's not a great
but
pickup
I understand
line.
what you're saying.
Pulling out a guitar at a party and be like, oh,
that'd be far worse.
Yeah.
With the crypto conversation, there's nothing to smash on the stairs.
Right.
With the
exactly.
guitar, you can smash the guitar.
Right. But no, it's going to change how we interact with each other. It's going to change how governments work. It's going to create entirely new concepts like decentralized autonomous organizations that will disintermediate organizations like banks and insurance companies, most government processes. I mean, it acts just like a voluntarist insurance collective that you can join, and you'd have, your money will come in and go out in this kind of seamless equilibrium that you control completely, that's completely decentralized and anonymous, and no one can fuck with you. I mean, it's just, they can't knock on your door and say, hey, look, we're stealing all your gold and then we're going to go sell it. They can't take your Bitcoin. They can't take your Ethereum. They are screwed, and they're starting to realize that they're going to lose all control. And there's this sci-fi trope of greater and greater centralization leading to one world government. And you see it in all, like Blade Runner and all these other movies where it's just
Star Trek.
Yes, yeah. I don't think that's the future. I think the future is decentralization, because people are becoming more and more empowered by technology. So they're going to be decentralized by the power of their money, decentralized by the power of technology that 3D prints food and medicine and homes, gardens that grow themselves, robots that handle everything. I mean, we're going to need government less and less, and government's going to be able to impose itself less and less. And we're going to have these, like I said, disintermediating technologies like decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs as they're called in short, that handle a lot of the things like arbitrage and insurance and banking and all of this. And it's the world that's coming is going to come so fast and so weird, but it's going to be awesome. And even though I think we're about to go through the greatest financial collapse in the history of humankind, and the world is going to be plunged into absolute chaos, on the other side of it is this very optimistic vision, I believe, of the future of an empowered, free humanity, completely decentralized and left to do as they please, in safe, secure ways that encourage the project of human flourishing.
So do you believe that we have to have a generation of woe to arrive at that? Like, we have to hit rock bottom before it's going to get better?
Yes.
It's my mind blowing right now by everything Tony just said. It's like, hey, buy gold and silver, and then Tony comes in and just
Well,
bam.
gold and silver is going to be a big part of that too.
Yeah, it is. I think I always like to try, and no offense or anything, but you're like playing so far above the rim that I think some people listening to this right now are like, what did he just even say? What we're talking about is a disruptive technology, and that's what Bitcoin is. And there's been many disruptive technologies in our history. The internet is a great example of a disruptive technology. Who would have thought that, in 1992 or whatever it was before the internet was even invented, that we would have these magic machines and you can send these mails an electronic mail. What the hell is that? I mean, all this has been very disruptive. What else was disruptive? The automobile was disruptive. The telephone was disruptive. And these
printing
things,
press,
when they happen really fast. One of my favorite presentations is by a guy named Tony Seba, and he's talking about disruptive technologies. And if you look at a photo of downtown New York City, whatever the hell street it is, in 1904, 99% of the vehicles on the street are buggies, horse and buggy, and there's one car. 10 years later, 1914, the same snapshot, every vehicle on the street is a car, and there's one horse and buggy. 10 years it took to completely disrupt the horse from being our primary mode of transportation in the world. So for him to talk about, this new cryptocurrency thing coming in and Bitcoin's going to do this and that, and everyone's like, okay, pal, whatever. What else are we going to have? Color TVs? Haha.
But you could even take Bitcoin out of the equation and just talk about blockchain. I mean, just the underlying technology of blockchain, as far as I can tell, seems to have limitless applications. I mean, there's so many things so many new services that we'll be used to that will have blockchain technology underneath them. So because I'm still learning and I'm not super sophisticated in the financial forecasting space, I try to stay agnostic about my predictions of what I think is going to happen. But I just think there's no question that blockchain is the disruptive technology of the 21st century because of the way it's going to change everything from not just finance and contracts, but name it, franchising, restaurant, just name it. And it can have a piece of the pie.
Exactly.
So let's use me as the benchmark in this room.
Okay.
The silver that I have is all based around eating and drinking. So I've got some silver like plates and stuff like that that are part of our family and been for a long time. In fact, for a little bit, we thought that they were like stolen from Jewish families in World War II and resent. And luckily we fully researched these pieces and they were not. So like we don't have any war medals or anything like that. I don't have any Bitcoin. All of my money is tied up in a bank account that I bring down to almost zero all the time. And then a little bit of saving from my crap company that does not match a 401k.
And apparently doesn't listen to this podcast.
Well, I don't care if they do. I say it to their face all the time. I'm like, how do you expect someone to get ahead when you don't do a 401k match? I think we made $150 million last year. So here's my question. From an outsider, when I hear about Bitcoin, I think of two things. Number one, I think of a previous guest on the podcast. I won't say him by name because I'm sure he'll listen to this episode and he's sad, but he invested in Bitcoin when it was, like $200 a bit or a coin or whatever you want to say, and then rode that train. And then it was really, really high and he didn't sell when it hit like a peak. And then, so he goes back thinking like I could have had so much more wealth if I would have gotten out of Bitcoin at the time. But from what I'm understanding is like he just needs to play the long game on that, and he could, like that value is just going to increase and increase and increase for him, as well as give him the ability to buy in any market in the world as soon as Bitcoin becomes a standard. Number two, I don't understand how with cryptocurrency, like Kodak created its own, like nobody's taking pictures anymore. Kodak, it's all on our phones. Why can a company like Kodak all of a sudden come out with a cryptocurrency?
Well, I guess
that's what makes me afraid of it, right? Like, I'm a member of like 75 reward zones, like the Red Lobster Rewards Company and the Best Buy Rewards Company, and I feel like at one point it's just going to be popular for corporations to be like, oh yeah, here's the Mick Buck.
Well,
all of this.
It's funny you mentioned that because you could very easily have a Big Mac backed cryptocurrency. You could have an artwork backed cryptocurrency. There are people that are selling. You can trade in a cryptocurrency for 1 hour of drawing time. People are going to be able to commoditize their own activity, their own value that they can create in the world, or value that they've already created. I saw a cryptocurrency backed by socks. It was called Sock Coin, and there was only 70 of these very specifically made socks. They had funny little cat artwork on them, but there was only 70 of them that you can get. And based on the fact that these things existed, they issued an Ethereum-based token that you could trade in for these socks, and the socks went up in value. The tokens went up in value. I mean, it's a little bit like a tulip run, which is a reference to a big like financial bubble surrounding the price of tulips back in the day. But that's the world we're going into. Anyone can issue their own currency, and then all that's left is to convince people that it has any value. So it's going to be a wild world coming up here.
Is Bitcoin number one in the space because it was first and so it got the most widely adopted by people?
It's first and it's the most tested. It's the most decentralized. And every test that it's been come up against that could have destroyed it, it's passed with flying colors. So
right. Can we go back to precious metals for a little bit here?
Yeah, let's get there. Yeah.
I specifically silver. So like I said before, silver is something that I can buy an ounce of it roughly between $15 and $18 depending on the day and how the price is being manipulated at that particular day. And the prevailing messaging that I see online about silver is that it has the most upside potential as far as, having more value. Although at the same time, I hear that message and then I hear, but don't hold it as an investment, hold it as a hedge. Don't see it as the thing that you're going to be converting to US dollars in the future. It is the currency that you will be using on some level. So I guess where do you guys rest on that? And do you feel the same way about gold? Do you see precious metal holding, specifically maybe silver, as more of a hedge, more of as an investment, part of both? What do you think?
I view hedge and investment as kind of the same thing in my mind, because if you're holding silver and as a hedge, I mean, that's a hedge against the currency, the dollar devaluing in the future, right? So, if the cost of bread goes up to $25 a loaf, then you can use your silver to offset that inflationary hedge. That's what I think of it. And likewise with investing, I mean, if you buy 1 ounce of silver for $20 today, and in 6 months you can get $40 for it, that's a solid investment there as well. So I kind of view them as almost interchangeable. But again, and this is just my personal take. People have many different reasons why they want to hold precious metals, all of which are valid, including the shit might hit the fan and I don't know what I'm going to need, so I want this. But I really think that insurance play is an important part. And people say, well, you're a gold salesman, you own a shop, you want everybody to buy gold. Well, I've done this many times in real life and practicality, where people come in and they have a large sum of money to spend because they came into some money, or they inherited it, or they liquidated a 401k. And I say, most of the time, unless it's, under 20,000 or something, I will say, don't spend it all here. I mean, I want you to buy some gold and silver, but you should diversify into some other avenues as well. So I'm not the guy that just says buy gold and silver and forget everything else. I want to just make that clear. But are you a homeowner, either of you guys?
Sure am.
Okay. Do you have fire insurance on your house?
Sure do.
Have you ever used it?
Nope.
Why do you keep paying for it?
Because one day there's going to be a fire.
Okay. Or maybe there won't be. But either way,
My
need
lake
it.
cabin burned down when I was a kid, so I know the value of that.
It's an insurance policy. Tony's a homeowner. He strokes that check for his fire insurance all the time. He's never used it. Most people have fire insurance on their home, or everybody does, and most people haven't used it. Well, then why do you keep paying for it? Same thing with gold and silver, right? You might not ever use it. The worst case scenario is you buy it now and you hoard it and you tell your kids and grandkids to buy gold and silver, and then you end up dying and it passes on to the next generation. What's so bad about that? You know?
So here's a question. So I buy some gold and silver. Do I also need to own a safe for this? I mean, how should I be protecting it in my home? Right now, I have my money in a bank, which is insured. So if the bank gets robbed, my value should still be there.
I'd say don't keep it in the bank. If you don't own physically your gold and silver on your person, you don't own it at all. Because if the government's going to come for precious metals, they're going to raid the banks first, and the banks aren't going to protect you, and the insurance it's going to pay you out money that loses value instantly. So
or if
hold your own.
If the bank closes, we have a banking holiday of some sort, like has happened recently in many countries around the world because they've had a currency crisis. Greece is the latest, greatest example of that, where they just closed the banks and you could only get $60 a day out of the ATM. If the bank's closed, even if the government isn't seizing your stuff, they don't have to let you in. Yep. They don't need to let you in to get to your safe deposit box, and you'll get in when the bank opens, if they open. So unless it's a large holding, I would say just keep it at home. And then people say, well, where should I keep it? I'm a big fan of hiding it in plain sight. If you have a safe put somewhere and robbers come into your home and they're in there, with unrestricted access while you're out of town, they'll find the safe and the safe will disappear. But they might not find those ounces of gold rolled up into your socks in the sock drawer, or in the cookie jar in the kitchen, or under the sink in an old Palmolive bottle. I mean, there's lots of places you can hide precious metals, and a lot of value. I mean, 20 grand of gold will fit in the palm of your hand. It isn't like we need to fill a shoebox. We're talking about filling a plastic tube about a quarter the size of a coffee cup will hold $20,000 in gold. So you can hide it in a lot of spots. But
what sort
keep
of
it at
booby
home.
traps do you recommend?
Just for the average homeowner and recreate that.
C4
so.
and Twipwire is my favorite.
Yep.
Yeah.
What is current U.S. law as far as like asset reporting with metals that you hold? Is there any law that you have to report it, or like, let's say someone comes in your shop and buys $1,000 worth of silver? Is that like, do they have to report it at all or not?
Nope.
So the government has no idea how much precious metals you have.
Unless
currently.
you come in and purchase gold in my shop and pay by check.
Got it. Okay.
Then there's a record of that because there's the record of you writing the check to MinDak. But yeah, you can do cash transactions up to $10,000 in cash without there being a reporting requirement on my end. If you try to spend 10 grand more in cash in any business, or withdraw 10 grand from your bank, or try to deposit 10 grand in your bank, then you got to fill out a form. So that's the threshold for that.
And does your business still have a Bitcoin ATM?
It does, yes.
So can you explain that to us a little bit too? Because that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's a Bitcoin ATM, but it's not only Bitcoin. It serves about 6 different tokens: Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dash, Ethereum, Tron, and
Dogecoin?
Komodo, I think, is one of them. No Dogecoin.
No Dogecoin.
Nope. So there's 6 different tokens that you can buy or sell for cash.
Okay.
So you can walk into my store with cash and show the machine your QR code on your wallet, and it will send the coins to your wallet once you put the cash in the machine, and vice versa. You can send Bitcoin from your wallet to the machine, and it'll spit you out cash.
So I did previously own a little bit of Bitcoin and exchanged it for fiat because I had even no fiat. Then I needed fiat for bread and gas at the moment. And I do intend to eventually get cryptocurrency of some form again, but I'm trying to become hyper educated about it so I understand what it is that I'm getting. And the thing that I'm wrapping my head around the most is Ethereum. And because this is my understanding, and you guys are going to have to really correct me here, Ethereum is not the coin, right? Is it the protocol underlying everything that does handle smart contracts? And then with that protocol as like an operating system, you can then build a coin on top of it?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Ethereum is like a world computer. And instead of RAM and CPU and power usage, it uses the token called Ether. So if you have Ether and you want to power a smart contract, the more Ether you put into it, the more powerful your smart contract, yada, yada. So just think of Ethereum as a big world computer that anybody can compute anything on or run any smart contract on.
Can you explain what a smart contract is?
Yeah, it's just a contract that's executed automatically when certain threshold is met. I mean, just like any contract in the world. A really good analogy is a poker game. All the activity around a poker game is a contract. So if I call, that's a contract for me to pay a certain amount. When you bet, that's a contract for you to pay a certain amount. And if I lose, the contract executes. I get the money or you get the money and I get to go home crying because I just lost all my money. So all you do is you take these real world examples and you turn them into smart contracts. And actually, when the first Bitcoin white paper came out, there was inside the code the start of a poker game based around Bitcoin, because it's just such a perfect transfer of this type of money and this usage of it. So yeah, it's really no more complicated than that. At the surface level, it's just a contract that's executed digitally.
Does it depend? Are there restrictions on types of contracts that would work on it? Because it wasn't Chico Crypto, but it was some YouTuber recently who I was watching on this topic was talking about how, like in the United States judicial system, we have judges that sit and preside over contracts and will often decide whether something is, say, in the spirit of the law versus black and white. And this commenter was saying that like smart contracts in Ethereum are good for really black and white scenarios, and they're less good at contracts that deal with gray zones, I guess. Is that true? And do you see that changing at all in the future?
That's true. And what will change Ethereum will be kind of a second tier level. And what you're talking about is a real world, what they call oracle. And what an oracle is the contact point in reality where the thing that has to happen, we need to verify that it happened. We have to verify in reality that something is actually in the spirit of it. And then you'll have these various other technologies that link real-world oracles to the Ethereum's world computer. And now you're talking about other tokens like Chainlink. I know Chico Crypto talks a lot about Chainlink because that's a technology that's going to help do that. And Microsoft is actually building out a lot of real-world oracle tools to connect to Ethereum. It's not something I know just a whole lot about, so I won't go too deep into it. But you do raise an interesting point. Ethereum can be used as a black and white contract facilitator, but at the end of the day, it's just I think they're going to use the best things about Ethereum to be sort of a layer 2 part of some real world contracts that also need real world oracles. So.
Gotcha.
Let me take a hard left turn here back to precious metals.
Yes.
Tucker's uncle used to do something that I found incredibly intriguing, which he called silver mining, where he would go to his bank and order $200 in like 50-cent pieces. Mm-hmm. And there was a certain date that if it was manufactured, let's say before 1960,
I think it's 62, I think.
64.
Yeah.
They had a higher percentage of silver in it, blah, 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 whatever that was. And so they were worth far more than 50 cents at that point. And so And he would do that like a couple times. And if he's on a business trip, he would, contact a bank and do that. So if I end up with let's say a dozen of these pre-1964 $half pieces, like
Could be quarters or dimes too.
really?
Yep, quarters, especially and dimes.
I mean, how does that work? Because obviously there's got to be a cost. Like, I understand it's worth more because inside of that there is value, but at the same time, to access that value, wouldn't I have to really burn down like the coin itself? How does that work?
Those coins are commonly bought and sold as investment grade bullion. I have them in my store.
Junk silver, right, is the term?
Junk silver is what it's called. It's called junk silver because they're old, they're ugly, and they're only 90% pure by weight. But yeah, 64 and older $half, quarters, and dimes used to be made of 90% silver. And then they, of course, took that away as well after 1964. And so now our change doesn't have any precious metals content in it. But yeah, they're worth about $6 a piece. And the practice of mining is very popular. There's guys all over town that do it. They go into their local bank, they'll buy 100 or 2 or 500 or $1,000 in $half that are all rolled up, and they'll go home and just sit there at the kitchen table, the 6-pack of Budweiser, break open the rolls, search for a silver $half. They're $6 a piece right now. So if you can, buy them for 50 cents and then sell them to me for $6, that might be a worthy investment if you get lucky and hit a roll that's got a few in it.
Whole YouTube channels are based off this. Where that's all they do is they've got a guys. There's probably like one dude in every town that does it, because like if there are too many people, like banks are just like, we're done doing this. This isn't worth it to us at all.
Yeah, it's a hassle for them.
It's
they
a
don't
huge
like
hassle for them, but also it's getting harder and harder to find because there's only so many that are out there in the world. And people have been doing it for a while. So my Uncle Tim doesn't even do it anymore, just because he was barely finding anything after a while, and just got he liked it for the hunt, because he loves to hunt things, right? So he'll finding deals and stuff. That's his whole thing, and that was big for him too. I wanted to do it, I just didn't get into it. But then when I started just buying silver, I was like, now this is scratching the itch for me.
I have one of the greatest hunting stories that I've run across in my years in the business. A few years ago, when my store was downtown, during cleanup week, a young, disheveled young man came in, and he had 2 tubes of silver rounds. They were 20 ounces to a tube. So he had 41-ounce silver rounds or coins. And, sometimes in my line of work, you need to question why these people are selling this to you, because honestly, the kid didn't look like he should be having 40 ounces of silver. So I'm like, did you inherit these, or, what's the story behind these? He's like, I found them on a box on the curb. Cleanup week. I would just, I go around through these neighborhoods and I go through stuff, and going through somebody's box on the curb, and somebody put 40 ounces of silver. It was $800. The kid walked out of my store 3 feet off the ground. I just made his millennium, I think, and so, it's funny how you say it's hard to find it, but it's out there.
Right.
I mean,
Still
it's out
there.
there everywhere. Garage sales, estate sales, I've had so many people bring me items that they found in the bottom of a box that they bought at an estate sale. The top of the box was nuts and bolts and hammers and knives or whatever. And then underneath we found this coin. Is it gold? Is it worth anything? Yeah. It's a 1-ounce gold eagle. It's worth $1,600. And then they about pass out.
In plain sight.
Yeah,
that's plain sight.
That's one of the funnest parts about my job is, people find things, or elderly women come in and they have a lifetime of jewelry that they've accumulated over the years, and they think it's all junk, but they don't realize that, hey, 10 karat is worth something, 14 karat's worth something, and then you write them a big fat check. And
There's a lot.
fun.
There's a lot of people who don't just hoard gold and silver; they actually hoard copper as well. Because certain pennies have actual copper in them past a certain date as well. So no pennies have actual copper in them anymore. It's a different date than 64. I think it's older, but I'm not positive. It might actually be more recent. Maybe in the 70s that they finally took the copper out of it. But there's copper penny hoarders out there, and that's what they go for. They don't go for gold or for silver. They go for pennies. And I just find that really fascinating too. And that sent me down the YouTube rabbit hole of people who melt at home melt down metals and recast them into bars. Typically, it's copper or aluminum because they're everywhere. They're really easy to melt. It's hard to melt gold and silver at the temperatures you can get, and plus, people don't necessarily want to do that themselves. But it made me go down this rabbit hole too of just watching people go to junkyards and go, oh, there's a lot of copper in this TV right here. And they're going to go through all the work to take the copper out. And at the end of the day, it's maybe $10 US at the moment of copper they're going to get out of there. But they're also betting that at the same time, and it would stand to reason that in a world where suddenly gold and silver on top, other metals that aren't nearly as scarce, but are still around like copper might also accrue in value. Mm-hmm. So do you see people coming for copper at all in your world at all? I would doubt that they would, because it's not going to be nearly as valuable.
Once in a while, I'll have somebody call or stop in and ask if I take copper or whatever, but I don't do any non-precious metals. I have a hard enough time keeping track of gold and silver and the U.S. stuff. People come in with exotic paper money from around the world, foreign change, all this stuff all the time. I just try to focus on, mostly U.S. denominated stuff. I'll do world stuff if it's gold or silver because it's easy to tell. Mm-hmm. It says right on the coin what the weight is and the purity. So even though I don't know what it is, I can just tell from that how much gold or silver's in it.
Is palladium rarer than gold?
That's another thing. People ask me about palladium and platinum all the time, and right. I don't focus on those markets either. Because I sell 99% of the stuff is gold and silver. Sure. 1% is platinum or palladium. Palladium's in the news a lot, though. I mean, we're talking $2,500, $27 an ounce, $2,700 an ounce. Just a few short years ago, it was around $650 an ounce. So that's really taken off. I know they use it a lot in industrial applications, catalytic converters, things like that.
That's what drives a lot of the speculation on silver too, right? Because it's so usable and it's used in technology. Mm-hmm. Both gold and silver are, but gold is just so much more expensive and more expensive to put it into your devices. So it seems that silver might have a heyday when it comes to that.
You were asking earlier if silver is a good investment versus gold or something, maybe.
Investment versus a hedge, I think was, and I'm just sort of regurgitating a lot of the things I've heard other people in the space say.
Yeah. And I don't know how this whole silver manipulation game is played. I don't read a lot about that because my time is finite. But right now, here's what I can tell you. The gold to silver ratio, which means how many ounces of silver it takes to equal 1 ounce of gold, is 97. And historically, that number has been around 55. So 55 ounces of silver equals 1 ounce of gold. Right now, it's 97, so it's almost double, which means that silver is tremendously undervalued, and gold has been performing well lately. I mean, it's up to almost $1,700 an ounce. So if somebody was listening to this going, should I buy gold or should I buy silver? I would highly recommend silver. I think it's so undervalued right now. Mm-hmm. It's like a flashing blue light Kmart special right now. It's so cheap, and I think it's going to take off soon. And when it does, it's going to go like a rocket. I mean, once these markets really move and they become impervious to the manipulations and just the free market economy takes over, and you're going to see an explosion that just probably we haven't seen in quite some time.
Probably haven't seen in 3,000 years.
Yeah. It's just going to be sick.
So I have an old class ring, like from the year I graduated, 2002, and I know that there's some gold in it, because my dad was really pissed when he wrote the check to Jostens for it.
Yeah, it's probably 10 karat. Most class rings are 10 karat.
So I've never worn it, not once. It just sits in a drawer at our house. So if I've got that and I want to get some value out of it, like what do I do with it?
Bring it into my store. I'll take a look at it. Under my little magnifier, I'll determine what karat it is. And then I'll place it on a scale and we'll weigh it out and see how many grams it is. And depending on which carat of gold it is, I'm going to say, here's the price of gold today. This is the carat that your ring is. Here's how many grams it weighs. This is what it's worth. And then you can choose to sell or not.
So if I sell it to you, what do you do with it? I mean, are you banking on some guy named JJ comes in and who's got a opal birthstone or what?
It all goes to the refiner. I don't retail any used jewelry or anything like that. All the jewelry I buy is just called scrap metal, in the business, and it just goes and gets refined.
So I imagine you must see a fair amount of people who are settling estates coming into your business.
Yep.
I remember when we were doing my mom's estate, we found a coin collection that my grandfather had that he passed down to my dad, and our attorney said, well, you need to go get that valued because it's part of the estate. And so we said, okay, well, what do we do with that? And we brought it to a coin place, and they said, really what you're looking for is you're looking for someone who can assess the metal value in this. And we do the same with the silver serving stuff that we had. And so we brought it all to some place in the cities where my sister was at, and they had it for 3 weeks, and then she picked it up, and they said, okay, well, this is our approximate value of what this stuff is without having to do a deep thing. But I think we paid $200 to have everything valued, and then they had to have an official notarized letter that sat with the estate. But it's one of those things where I never thought about it. We had all this stuff in my house since I was a little kid, and I never thought twice about it. And now all of a sudden we're finding it. So that's another way the government can find out about precious metals in your house, right? Like paying by check, and also if you have to declare it in some estate paperwork, because that's all at the county recorder's office now.
Sure.
So if you're going to hand it down to your kids, make sure you tell them where it is, and then be like, but don't tell the government about it, because you want to keep it for yourself.
Coming back to the gold-silver ratio too, the reason that's also going to rebound is silver both gold and silver are used in a lot more things than just money, in electronics and stuff. They're both really, you can draw gold and silver out into one atom lines or wires or whatever, and it still conducts electricity really well. But silver's even better than gold at it, and silver has a lot more uses than gold. So I actually think, there's no actual reason that silver has to be worth less than gold. And for a long time throughout our history, it was actually worth more than gold. And the other thing that silver is used in medical technology. You can put it in food. There's some Asian desserts where you just got a really fine sheet of silver over the top of the dessert, and you just eat it like
Plenty
that.
of gold does
There's
that too.
a guy from Kentucky who turned 98 years old, and he's like, yeah, I eat a little bit of silver every single day, and that's his key to longevity.
So, Jack, you're gonna like this. I was
Basically
looking this up.
vibranium or something.
So there's a thing that can happen to you. A lot of people will take colloidal silver as sort of because silver has antibacterial properties. It's used in a lot of medical technology, catheters, stuff like that. And people will make a solution of just colloidal silver, it's called, and just drink it because it can kill a lot of bad bacteria. But there was, Jack, you can get the kick out of this. There was a libertarian candidate for what did he run for? He's a Libertarian Party candidate running for United States Senate in 2002 and 2006. Of course, he lost his race because that's what it means to run as a Libertarian candidate. You're going to lose your race. And then ran for governor of Montana in 2000, 2004. So he would take this colloidal silver, and he came down with a disease called, what is it called? I'm looking up.
Is this where he turns blue?
Argyria, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a human Smurf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Your
I've seen that
eyeballs
before.
turn blue. Your
much was he
skin turns
taking,
blue.
though?
I don't know. He was probably pounding that. I think he was just eating flecks of it too.
Yeah.
Like you put it.
Maybe
you
that's what
sprinkle on a
Veruca
cereal,
Salt
whatever.
ate when she was at Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
yeah.
Maybe
Yep.
it had too much silver in it. That's why
I'm a
she.
firm
Silver
believer
gum.
in colloidal silver. I
Well-
use colloidal silver every day.
Well, just don't turn blue, man.
I won't be consuming it in copious amounts.
Okay,
Let's put it
yeah.
that
I mean,
way.
if I'm not mistaken, this guy had facial hair too, right? And his
Yep.
in the picture, his facial hair turned stark white, but his skin, if he was Smurf color blue.
Yep, and it's with you for the rest of your life. You can't get it undone. So
But it's not other than the fact that you look like a walking, talking Papa Smurf. This guy didn't have health. It didn't deter his
Right.
health in any way. It's not like all of
Exactly.
a sudden he was sick from it. It just changed the pigment color of his skin.
yep.
It's very interesting.
I kind of have a different view than my buddy Tony here on the whole government confiscation thing, which is rampant in the precious metals world, right? We're afraid of the government knowing what we have, so they're not going to send soldiers to my home and physically remove the metals. In 1933, when that happened, that was real wealth confiscation because they were, gold and silver were recognized as true wealth. I think in today's age, if the government wants to seize funds, they're just going to do it with the tap of a keyboard. Everyone's 401ks are exposed. All your bank accounts are exposed. If the government wants to seize your money, they're going to find ways to do it electronically. That'll be much more efficient than sending troops around, knocking on people's doors and digging up their under the old oak tree. So as a dealer, I'm not that much too frightened by government confiscation. That being said, if I'm going to walk into somebody's shop and buy gold and silver, I'm going to pay cash every time.
Gentlemen, as we wrap this thing up, so Jack, again, tell us the location of your store. If there's somebody here who who I know is thinking like, I want to do something with that stuff my grandpa left me.
Sure. Yeah, it's MinDak Gold Exchange right here in Fargo. It's 4955 17th Avenue South. That's in the Scaff apartment building 2 blocks west of Home Depot. It's that big red building, and it's got retail on the first floor and apartments up top.
They still have that restaurant at the
Cracked
tail end of it.
Pepper.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good food,
good
isn't
homemade
it? Yeah.
food, yeah. So that's where we're at, and thanks for the plug, and I had a great time doing this with you guys.
This is very, very interesting. Tony, thank you for stopping by again.
Hey, you know what I realized? Last time, now that you mentioned that, last time I was here, what did I talk about?
Heavy metal music.
Heavy
but
metal.
This is heavy metal.
Oh my God.
Oh.
I was told I was getting $10.
Yeah,
You're going to see
Tony will take
Tucker
care-
on the way
Okay.
out.
Tony will take care of that for
It's
you.
in JJ Meets World coin. So it's the new podcast-based coin.
JJ coin. It only works at Marcus Theaters.
And not all locations. You have to check in advance. Gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews, and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. I told our sponsor I wanted to be paid in gold, and she said no, because you'll probably try and eat it like gold coins. And she's right.